Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. To continue from yesterday, we were examining the 9 forms of devotion. This is called Navada Bhakti. As was mentioned yesterday, devotion is love. Bhakti is pure love. Love is, of course, a type of emotion, and there are different ways that love is expressed towards God, towards Bhagwan. So in the Srimad Bhagavad Puran and some other scriptures probably, but in the Srimad Bhagavatam certainly, the 9 forms of bhakti are discussed, and they are called the Navaratna Malika, garland of 9 gems. See, it is a garland, very beautiful garland. Yesterday we were examining SHRAVAN Bhakti, which is essentially listening to texts, listening to ideas from the scriptures, the sages, the act of listening. So a little bit more examination on that today we will do. SHRAVAN Bhakti is a doorway. It is a gateway to the full opening of bhakti. To open bhakti completely within oneself, all 9 types of devotion, they synchronize together, and that is why it is called Navaratna Malika. Navaratna Malika is a garland. It is a garland. It's a beautiful garland. How the flowers are, if you have 9 flowers on one garland, and they're so beautiful, and they're just, hanging together on that one string. The string is connecting them together. Similarly, to open bhakti and to connect the different flowers of bhakti, essentially, these different 9 different ways of doing bhakti. Once that happens, what is the end result? One has prepared oneself for the 10th bhakti. So the 9 forms of devotion are a preparation for the 10th devotion, 10th bhakti, that's the Dasmi Bhakti. That 10th bhakti is called Prem Lakshana. That is the bhakti of the highest category. That is not sadhana. Sadhana has stopped. These 9 forms of bhakti are sadhana. They can culminate by the grace of Paramatma, by the grace of God, into the 10th bhakti. The 10th, the transition from the 9 to the 10th, we will talk about some other time. That is a little bit further away subject. But for now, the thing to keep in mind, some of the points to keep in mind, is that, are that SHRAVAN Bhakti is a doorway, it is a gateway into the opening of the other 8 forms and into the awakening of jnana, understanding, knowledge, vision, wisdom. All that happens by listening. And really that is what the function of the gurus is that only. Guru is what, after all? Guru is a process in reality. It's a process that awakens within each individual from ignorance into light. And those, whoever they are on the outside, sages, incarnations, gurus, teachers, parents, anybody, XYZ, that is awakening this process, that is Guru Tattva. And the Guru Tattva is within us only. It is not just something, external. So there are so many gurus that have come, so many Guru Paramparas are there, so many great sages have come. We hear about all of them, we learn about them. All of that is true. That is fine. Listening to them, listening to their ideas. There's no end to the number of gurus. And by listening to their ideas, their thoughts, their perspectives. The listening process, if it is done with a devotional attitude, this is what I was mentioning yesterday, that what is the attitude and what is the intention and what is the goal? Three things. For example, if somebody is listening to Ramayana, what is the attitude? There are many scholars on Ramayana. Are they necessarily devotees of Sri Ramchandraji? They could be, but it doesn't have to be. There are many scholars on the Vedas, on the Vedanta. Does that mean that they are deliberately attempting and trying to realize that truth? Doesn't have to be. They could be. They could be fascinated by it. So the attitude of respect has to be there, first of all. That's true for anybody, researcher or a devotee. Then the intention of listening, why we are listening, for who we are listening, what is the purpose of listening to this? That's the second question. And of course, the third is the bhava, the feeling behind it, the inner state of emotion behind it. And that's probably the most important thing. They're all important, but the inner state of devotion in listening to, let's say, the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads, or let's say, for example, any of the in different sampradayas, different scriptures are there. Like in the Vallabha Sampradaya, there are many commentaries written by Sri Vallabhacharya. Ramanujacharya has written commentaries. In the Swaminarayan Sampradaya, there are many scriptures like Vachanamrutam, and so many others are there. What is the bhav behind it? Why we are listening, to who we are listening? Because the Guru Tattva is actually inside of us. Inside of us where? Where is it inside? It is the mind. Mana. So the manas, the antakarana, the man buddhi cheta ahankara, is the inner instrument, but what we call our inner mechanism of the mind. That is the Guru. And that is also something that needs to gain the wisdom of satsanga from the outside. From the outside, the internal awakens. Just like a child who is born into this world is developing and growing, is learning everything from the outside, the languages and culture and traditions and values and everything, do's and don'ts and all that. It's coming from the outside, but it's really not something that is already there. It's within each person, the knowledge and truth and everything is already there. It's just activated. It's not something that is new to the individual. It seems like that. See, for example, if I hear a talk on, let's say, something from the Bhagavad Gita or something from some guru, and if it resonates with it, say, oh, I get it. Well, how can we get it? How can we say, I understand it? How can that be? That's because it's already there. If it's not already there, you would never understand it. This is what Socrates taught. In the Greek philosopher, Socrates, in the Socratic method, this was one of his big ideas, and Plato also took on that point, that whatever we think we're learning from the outside is actually dormant on the inside. And it is just being opened up by the contact with others on the outside, the different teachers or gurus or whoever it is. And it doesn't even have to be like specific spiritual gurus. It could be anybody. We learn we gain even one thing of meaning that becomes active from anybody on the outside, or anything or any situation on the outside that becomes guru. And that is the glory of Shravanam, the first step. Because in reality, if this first is done, the other 8, they will just open up. Beautifully, they will open up. So, when we consider that my mind is my guru, how can that be? But to get to that stage, the contact with those who are enlightened, those who are awakened, those who are emitting the divinity through their words, through their actions, through their presence. The contact with that changes it, and in fact colors the mind with that contact, meaning that which is actually the divinity that is hidden within the mind begins to open through that contact. So that divinity that we're seeking, Divyata, divinity, the Atma, God, Brahman, Parabrahman, whatever name you want to give. These are just concepts right now until they're realized. Whatever name we want to call it, it is hidden within the mind, within our own mind. The only place where God is going to be seen directly is within ourselves. And once we recognize it, that it is an opening within, then that which is within is also outside. If we try to recognize God only on the outside without looking within, that may be a beginning, but we will get caught in the names and forms, because we are surrounded by names and forms. So to see beyond the names and forms, the internal activation of the Guru Tattva is necessary. And that is what Adi Shankaracharya is exactly trying to do in the Vivek Chudamani, which we will talk about in the future. The Bhagavad Gita is about that, the Brahma Sutra, Vivek Chudamani, the Vachanamrutam, every great scripture, the written Shri Bhasyam of Shri Ramanujacharya ji, every sage's teachings, including the teachings in the New Testament by Jesus, all of them, and also the teachings in the Old Testament, we're not excluding anybody. The truth comes in any form, through anyone. Truth is one. See, this is the whole point. In our Vedic tradition, there is a statement, Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one. It is one and undifferentiated one reality. Call it God, Parabrahma, Purushottam, Narayan, Bhagwan, Shiva, Jesus, God, Trinity, XYZ name. Call it any name you want. Because right now they're just names. But the reality behind the name is what we're interested in. In Gujarati, in the Swaminarayan Satsang, there is this expression, Nam and Nami. Names are many. That is called Nam. Nami is the whose name it is. It's the reality. It's the person actually. So there are many names of God, but God is one. Or whatever God is the reality. So to touch the reality, the SHRAVAN Bhakti, with the sense of bhakti, with a sense of devotional attitude and gratitude and love and with the humility to say, I want to realize that mumukshu bhav, when all such qualities are there, then even one sentence even one sentence spoken by anybody on the outside that really is resonating with truth on the inside can open up the Guru Tattva from the inside. It doesn't mean that we don't necessarily need volumes of information. It's not like that. It is even the smallest idea, the briefest idea, I don't want to say smallest, but briefest idea that penetrates and awakens the full realization from inside by the grace of God. That is grace. That's why when Vedvyasji wrote 555 Brahma Sutras, Atato Brahma Jignasa, that was the whole intention. If even one of these things penetrates, it will lead to realization. And that is the whole point. The penetration, the filtering, and the sitting of the ideas within. Once we hold them, think about them, go into them, we become aware of the nature of bondage. So in SHRAVAN Bhakti, the first thing that happens, if it even happens, depending on our intention and progression and all, is the awareness of ignorance. Oh, that this is ignorance, this is bondage, this is bandhan, this is All of that awareness comes into one's realization. And that is the whole meaning of the word viveka. Vivek means what? To discriminate between that which is real and the unreal. That which ought to be done, which ought not to be done. That which one can move towards and move away from. So, Adi Shankaracharya ji's scripture, Shri Vivek Chudamani, what does it mean? It is to differentiate that I am the Atma, that knowledge, that jnana about the Atma and the Paramatma, and that which is not the Atma, Anatma, that which is illusion, ignorance, bondage, bandhan, etc. That is called Viveka. And that Viveka, for that to happen, this first Shravana Bhakti is absolutely and unequivocally necessary. Without it being present, there is no possibility of this differentiation occurring. And Sachin is not simply saying that. Based on, I can show you hundreds of scriptures where that is the case. And in the lives of all of the sages and the great devotees in every tradition of the world, this is what they have done. In their own way. To get to that state where this differentiation occurs, where this viveka occurs. What is, ultimately what is real, what is unreal. And what one wants to grow into, what one wants to get out of. All of that power is in the Shravan Bhakti, and the key is, it is a form of bhakti. Because the feeling inside is of love for God. If the feeling inside is not love for God, called Ishta Bhakti, then that Viveka that we're talking about may not happen. It might. Theoretically it might. But according to certain teachers and sages like Swami Sajanandji, in his perspective, he says that Viveka will not happen unless you are attached to the Ishtadevata. But there are those who would disagree with that. They would say that no, that's not the case. We can try to differentiate this ourselves. We don't need God or Ishtadeva. We don't need all that thing. We can just do it like just by ourselves, and we can just try to see what the separation is. Well, okay, try and see if it works. It might, but it would be very difficult. And the reason it is difficult, there's some psychological reason behind that. When you're attached to any form of God with love, the ego naturally is not going to be active as much. There's a lot of psychology and this inner science behind it. If I say, for example, that I'm listening to the Bhagavad Gita with a great love for Sri Krishna, that is a very different way of listening to the Gita or to the Bhagavatam. As opposed to, okay, let me listen to the Gita. I am everything. When Krishna says I am the Brahman, that's also me. The I is there. There is such a path in Advaita. But there's a massive danger without bhakti. And without bhakti, most likely, I would almost say 99, maybe even 100% of the time, without bhakti, the human ego is going to get hold of that I, and it will create a massive problem inside, where it will believe that it is the Brahman and is only the ego. To prevent that from happening, these 9 forms of devotion are in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And to prevent that from happening, and not just that, for the Viveka to really take hold, when we're attached to Bhagwan, to say, God, you are everything to me and I am your servant, I am your child, I don't know anything. So when we're putting our intelligence on the side to say, yes, there's intelligence, but you are beyond intelligence. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. This is all the bhakti attitude. We have intelligence, we may have awakened intelligence, all those things might be there. But even if they are there, I'm at your feet. Like Hanumanji. Hanumanji is an enlightened being. But he's at the feet of Sri Ramchandraji all the time. All the time. There's not a single moment where he is not in the seva bhav as such. because that is what maintains the viveka, and it prevents the ignorance from coming into play. So that is another whole point. The power of bhakti is so intense that it prevents ignorance from coming in, prevents ajnan from coming in, prevents delusion and illusion and all such things from coming in. That is the power of bhakti. Tremendous things are there. We get to all this. We could spend the next 5 years on this slide alone. There's no end to it. Narad Bhakti Sutra, Shandilya Bhakti Sutra, the Srimad Bhagavata, we can just open into infinity. Just these ideas. So obviously we're not going to do that way. We want to have the essence, grab a hold of it, pray to God to bless us from inside, and let the realization happen. Not simply talking. Sachin is talking right now, so what? It doesn't mean anything by itself. So what? So many people are talking in the world. Bahut log baat karte hain on God knows how many subjects. There's no end to that. What is the level of realization? How much realization? The feeling from inside, the emotion from inside that there's a loving emotion towards God. There's a love for the Paramatma, and in that, with that love, listening is going on to the scriptures, to the ideas, to the teachings. Then that is going to open the spiritual and more how can we say, beyond the intellect. It's the spiritual energy that opens up. Those are called the rasas. We'll get to that some other time. These bhavas are also shown on this slide here. Affective essences. It's beautiful. So once one goes into that and begins to experience the nectar of devotion, Bhakti Rasamrut Sindhu, which is a scripture written by one of the Goswamis in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara. Once you begin to experience the rasa of bhakti, the joy of bhakti, the taste of bhakti, once that is experienced, then one wants more of that. And that's beautiful. That's good to want more of that. So that the mind that is just seeking this pleasure sensations more and more from the outside world, it begins to transmute into the bhakti ras, from vishaya ras to bhakti ras, from vishaya sukh or vishayananda to brahmananda. That is the actual transmutation from one to the other. It's extraordinary, and this is very possible in our life, and that makes life just nothing but joy. Ananda, Divya Ananda. Okay, so that's good enough for today on this point.